over the world and collaborated with some of the most celebrated theater artists on 3 continents. He's not just an actor, but also a writer and an artist. And so he has performed in Vienna, London, Rome, and Paris. He's known as Inspector Keto on Man in the High Castle, as well as made appearances in Law and Order, SVU, and other shows too as well. And he's an alumnus of Brown University. And he's also lives in Maplewood, New Jersey, with his wife and his two daughters and 2 dogs, Luna and Yuki. So I'm really excited to introduce you to all, Joel de la Fuente. Thank you.
What's up, everybody? What's up, everybody?
Well, yeah, thank you so much for being here.
So glad to be here.
It's really awesome to have you here. So, my first question would be to you. Can you tell me more about your acting background and how you got into acting?
Sure. Well, I trained in New York City. I was a theater major at Brown University, and then went to the graduate acting program at NYU. And before that, I had just really loved the theater, but never saw anybody that looked like me on stage. So I never thought it was something I could do. But I wanted to be really close to it, so I did backstage stuff and set construction and stage management and stuff like that. By the time I was in high school, they were saying, well, look, you've done all that stuff you should just sort of act in a play just for the experience of it. And I was just so worried that, my friends would never accept me in that capacity, because I sort of felt like I was walking around acting a part to begin with anyway. I was one of very few Asian Americans in Chicago. So I did that. Everyone was super supportive. It totally bit me. And from then on, that was it. That's what I really
wanted. And you've been on different TV shows, including Man in the High Castle, CSI SVU, and Space Above and Beyond. What's been your most favorite show, and why?
I think every opportunity you have gives you something that, if you're open to it, gives you something that is just really awesome and special. And the job I'm working on right now, the Man in the High Castle, is it's just something that I'm so grateful for. It's a role that unlike any other that I've ever played before. So I'm glad for that opportunity. It's great to be in a show that tons of people actually watch. Mm-hmm. It's always good when people watch a show that you're on. I'm not completely used to that, but that's nice. And it's fun to just get to be an active part of the storytelling process. When you play a character that helps push the action of the story forward. It's a privilege.
Mm-hmm. So Man in the High Castle is your favorite?
Man in the High Castle is the one that's currently writing my checks. So,
so definitely your favorite. And then, when you were growing up, who was your most favorite actor or actress?
Meryl Streep, no question. Like when I was growing up and in high school, she's the whole reason why I wanted to become an actor, because it's not just the experience of there's something very special about the experience of watching someone work and being transported and believing a story and all that kind of stuff. But the way in which she always done that, the way she can disappear into a role, but you can also celebrate her range and the art of transformation and her ability to, she is such a master of her craft. And that to me is so exciting. It's people, I think, who, like, I really get off on the craft of acting. Like, I really love, if there's a great performance, you can't see any of the strings or anything, and it's great in and of itself, and that's great. But when you have a career where you're playing a bunch of different kinds of roles and you're embodying different things and telling different kinds of stories in different ways, that's really exciting. That's the kind of stuff I'm really interested in trying to do as an actor, which is to sort of transform yourself to sort of understand someone else's point of view.
And have you had any challenges throughout your acting career? And if you did, how did you overcome them?
Nonstop challenges. It's great to actually have challenges that are related to the work, but I think so much of being a professional actor versus just being someone who loves acting and is acting for fun is you're constantly having to sort of fight through adversity and and get yourself into positions where you can have the opportunity to act. Sometimes I think so many people have said that, being a professional actor is like 99% looking for work and then 1% working, which is so much of your energy can go towards either looking for work or keeping yourself healthy and financially solvent, and available enough to get jobs. And then sometimes when you get a job, you're so exhausted, and then the job is over, and you think, God, I finally got a job, and I was so tired, it just sort of passed me by. So you sort of have to figure out a way, if you're going to spend a life doing this, to take care of yourself and to try to attain as even a keel as possible.
Did you always know that you wanted to pursue a career in acting, or what kind of influenced you throughout your life?
Well, I always knew that, as I said, like in high school and stuff, I always knew that I loved acting, and that really excited me. But again, I didn't really see a career path there, and it didn't, I didn't see a lot of examples of people that looked like me. There were some, but there weren't a lot. And so my parents were both physicians, so I just sort of assumed that that's what I was going to do. And when I went to school, one of the first things I did was sign up for a neurology class, which ended up being really interesting. After almost failing it, I realized how interesting it was. But then being at Brown at that particular time and falling in with just an incredible group of artists and really interesting people, that sort of began this process where I started to feel really confident and emboldened and excited, and seeing a lot of diversity and talent. And they had so many paths to sort of follow your way into the acting industry. There were a lot of people at Brown that went to conservatory training programs like Juilliard and Yale. So that's basically the path that I chose.
And going off that, in today's society, we see actors and actresses that are predominantly white.
Mm-hmm.
And so, but we also see the rise of like black actors too as well, and actresses such as with Black Panther, the Tyler Perry movies, all these different things. But in today's society, we don't really see that many Asian actors, or actresses that are exemplified in these different movies. Except that movie Crazy Rich Asian that's coming out, or the TV show Fresh Off the Boat.
Uh-huh.
So I was gonna ask you, like, what does it mean to be an award-winning Asian actor, and do you feel a sense of inclusion in regards to acting in the Asian community?
There's a lot in there.
Yeah. We go with the first part.
Well, I think for me, I got my SAG card in I think in 1991. So I've been doing this, for more than 25 years, and today I see more diversity and opportunity than I ever have before. There's still a long way to go, but what I see trending is really exciting. There's a bunch of reasons for that. I think the biggest reason is one. There are generations of people of color who have now their families have been in this country for more than one generation. So there's a level of assimilation and a level of entitlement and ownership of culture that make them say, what I get to choose from is vast and diverse, and without apology, I choose this. I choose the arts. I'm excited about that. And there's more and more people doing that. So there's people in the public that are just choosing these things. The second thing is the growth of the streaming industry. Like there's, last year, there were more than 500 original shows. And I heard someone saying yesterday that this year there might be more than 700. Everybody's getting, here, YouTube Red, yes, all that stuff. And so what it does is it creates a tremendous opportunity for actors, and storytellers in general, like writers and directors and everything. But what it also does is it sort of destroys this model that there's 3 networks, 3 channels, 4 channels that want to capitalize on 20 million eyeballs. So now what they're saying is, it's more akin to a bookstore, which is that they don't want you all to buy the same book. You just have to come to the bookstore and you can find the book that you want. And this book will appeal to 20,000 people. This book will appeal to 60,000 people. But as long as you come in and everybody knows there's something that they want, then they're into it. So what that does is it creates the opportunity to tell more specific, personalized, diverse stories. And I think everybody wins as far as that goes. Sure, there's, it's really hard to make a good story at all. So a lot of those 500 or 700 shows won't be great, but at least there's an opportunity to risk and to fail. And so there's a ton of opportunity. So you're seeing a lot of people have chances that wouldn't have had chances before. Like the kinds of roles that I've had the opportunity to play over the last 6 or 7 years has been far more diverse and gratifying than it has been for the 20 years before that.
And like you said, you played a lot of different roles, like you mentioned in different shows. My brother's a huge fan of Man in the High Castle, so he actually asked me to ask you this question. How did you, prepare yourself in that role as Inspector Keto, not only in that show, but also in others as well?
That's an ongoing process, and a really interesting thing about Inspector Keto is one that he's a native-born Japanese man who's lived in the United States for 17 years. So a lot of it is sort of about trying to serve who that person would be in a way that's sort of with as much respect and knowledge and information as I can get, not being a native-born Japanese person, not being someone who's born in, the 1940s, and so there's a lot of research that's gone into that, and it's sort of ongoing. The more we go in that show, we've had an opportunity to sort of explore what might work more or less, like how much Japanese he's going to speak and how much Japanese then I have to learn, and kinds of people that I'm meeting and the kinds of realities that we're sort of, because it's an alternate reality. So the more we discover about that world, how I can do my preparation. The really great thing about working on a show that's run a bunch of seasons is, for me anyway, it always feels like you get another shot to sort of improve what it is that you're doing, and the role is always evolving and changing. And so it sort of feels like I've gotten to rehearse it 4 years so far. I hope that continues. What's your brother's name?
Christopher.
Christopher, what's up, man?
Huge fan.
Christopher, Jonathan says that you don't want an autograph, so but I might do it anyway.
I printed a picture. It was good. But going off that too, we talked about your shows and your movies, and you have, I heard about your Drama Desk Award nominated solo performance. That's already occurring, correct?
It's occurring right here, right now.
Right? Called Hold These Truths, which will be performed until August 5th at Theater Works Silicon Valley in Palo Alto. Could you talk to us more about kind of the background of the performance?
Sure.
And why you decided to pursue the role?
Yeah, I'm super, super excited to be doing the play here in the Bay Area. The play's called Hold These Truths. It's a one-person play, so it's basically me serving a story that Jeannie Sakata wrote and Lisa Rothi directed, but I'm sort of the only person on stage trying to tell the story of this man, Gordon Hirabayashi, who is a Japanese American who refused the internment during World War II. And he is such an unusual, interesting, real person. And he's a genuine American hero who, through his actions, did a lot of things that helped affect our history. And by our history, I mean American history. And I think there's just a tremendous amount of relevance that the story has today, not just real direct relevance. When you watch the play, a lot of the language that's used, a lot of the situations that are happening right now in the news, this current administration, the way that they are targeting certain groups and separating families and sort of promoting a culture of separation and fear. That is the same world that was happening during All These Truths, and it sort of addresses what happened then, and it sort of lays out like a cautionary tale and also some kind of inspiration for how we might be able to behave and respond today.
That's awesome. How did you, oh, thank you. This is better.
Okay.
Good. Okay, cool.
Should we repeat all that? Should we start from the very beginning?
Restart. And how did you first get involved in Hold These Truths, and what really drew you to Gordon Hirabayashi's story?
I had never heard of Gordon Hirabayashi when I was first shown the script in 2009. And as someone who is college educated and interested in Asian American studies and who prioritizes that, I was shocked that I'd never heard of him, and stunned at how cool his story was and what an interesting hero he was. And so that alone sort of made me feel like, well, I need to try to help tell the story, and I need to learn more about it. And then the fact that the vehicle through which the story is told, Jeannie Sakata's play, is truly remarkable. So it was just, it was an excellent confluence of events, and it was a great story that I felt needed to be told, and excellent collaborators. Lisa Rothy, the director, is an old friend of mine, and we'd been hoping to work together for a while, so this sort of worked out really well.
That's awesome. And what surprised you the most about his journey?
Different things surprised me at different times. I mean, it's a long journey. A lot of things happened. The play basically spans 40 some years of his life, and so a lot of crazy things happened to him, and he did a lot of interesting things. I'm always surprised at what happened to him and how he responded to things and how people responded to him along the way. So, to say that this play is sort of like a one-person play about the Japanese internment, it doesn't really tell you all the things that this play discusses. I think there are a lot of things that all sorts of people will get a whole lot of interest from the specifics of the story.
That's awesome. And are there any similarities between your role, like as Inspector Kido in The Man in the High Castle, and this current role?
That's really interesting. This, the funny thing is, I've basically I've been doing these two jobs sort of in tag team over the last few years. When I'm shooting Man in the High Castle, I can't do the play, obviously. And then when it works out and I'm not shooting, sometimes I get the opportunity to do the play, like here at TheaterWorks. They're sort of the inverse roles of each other. Gordon Hirabayashi is a Japanese American Quaker who stood by his principles and believed so heavily in the Constitution, human rights. Inspector Kido is a native-born Japanese person in America who's the head of the Japanese secret police, who also has a tremendous amount of duty and faith and belief in his empire, which is essentially fascistic, in practice. So they both share tremendous principles and a code of being, but they're believing in totally different systems.
Wow, that's awesome. And what are the differences between acting on stage versus on TV?
There's so many different schools of thought on this. I think at the end of the day, your goals are the same, which is you're serving a story. I think the tools you use to tell the story sometimes differ depending on what medium you're working in. At TheaterWorks, it's telling a story in front of 300 to 400 people every day, and you have to be heard. And it's essentially you conveying that story. So there's no close-ups, there's no camera, there's no microphone. So you're sort of responsible for all those aspects, and there's no framing. You're sort of framing the picture. I mean, you're framed in the lights and in the blocking, but when it happens every night, you're sort of the active ingredient that's making that all happen. So you sort of have to take all that into account, and you're sort of turning up all the knobs accordingly. In front of a camera, you don't have to do any of that. You have to. You can't be effortful in front of the camera because it sees it. It sees you trying to tell a story. It sees you trying to evade whatever it is that you're trying to do. So, in some ways, you have to sort of simplify and reduce what you're doing. but that doesn't necessarily mean do less, which I think a lot of people just say. I disagree with that. I think you just have to find less complicated ways of practicing the things that you're trying to achieve.
Trying to do. Mm-hmm. That's awesome.
I don't know if that makes any sense.
No, it does. It does. And there's a lot of actors and actresses out there. But what advice would you have for those who are trying to get into acting?
Well, the first thing I'd say is if it's something that you're really passionate about, congratulations on having something that you feel you're really excited about. Then I would say you must be vigilant about protecting that passion and cultivating and feeding it, because there's so many things that will conspire to destroy that passion. Loved ones who aren't supportive, the critical aspect in your own mind that tells you all the different reasons why such a thing isn't possible. Those things will always act upon you. So if you feel this tremendous passion, then you have to take care of it. You also have to take care of yourself, and you have to be as healthy as you can. You have to sort of, the life of a professional actor it's a long race. It's not a sprint. It's a race run in many chapters, and some chapters just don't go your way. Sometimes those chapters are at the beginning, and when that happens, you have to be ready and just sort of just tell yourself, I'm running a long race, and gird yourself and keep going. And then you have to sort of honor the reasons why you do it. If in fact you want to be an actor because you love acting, then learn everything you can about acting. Respect it. Understand the craft and the technique about the thing that you're choosing to love. It's not just a personality game. It's not just it's not a popularity contest. It's a real art form and a craft. And so I think that knowing how that works really serves you in the long term. And then the last thing I would say is you have to find a community of people that feel similarly to you and help each other, take care of each other, and collaborate with each other. Create your own work.
That's awesome. Thank you so much.
Yep.
We're going to move into Q&A, if that's okay. Do you guys have any questions for Joelle? That would be awesome. Oh. Perfect. Awesome.
Gosh, wait, hold on a second. Wait, who's asking the question? Oh, yes. Hello, sir. You.
Hi. I watched the show last Friday. It was very, very good. I sat in the seat after the show because I had to digest it afterward, and I really appreciate it. Just wondering, you're going through the life of a man through 50 years, and then there's like a dozen more other characters around him. How do you switch back and forth between all these, and then going through this man's growth through the process?
Thanks for coming to see it, and I'm really glad you enjoyed it. That's part of what I'm talking about as far as the joy of transforming and sort of embracing playing different characters. Part of this play, I'm not trying so much, other than Gordon, really, I'm not really trying to deeply portray a lot of these characters. A lot of it is there's a spirit of fun and play, hopefully, that infuses the play, that you're sort of, because you are just watching one person for a while, it is sort of like watching someone play on the playground in a weird way, sort of using whatever tools that they have to sort of enjoy themselves and to tell this important story for you. The idea is that we don't want to lecture you on the internment. We don't want to sanctimoniously tell you what a great man Gordon was. We want to, in the spirit of who he was, play and celebrate and enjoy transforming and using whatever skills that we have, just as, in the most basic way that we have. It's a one-person play. There's no flying sets in and out. There's no, there's no walking off stage and coming back on and changing a costume. There's none of that. So it is sort of just like a real fundamental look at how play and theater can help tell a story, you know. So really what I guess to answer your question is by going from one character to the next, there's sort of, more than anything, I think there's a sense of joy in doing that the joy in telling you a story that I think is so cool, you know, like I really see how cool this is, see how cool she was, see how cool this person was and how crazy it was when he did that sort of a thing.
Any other questions?
I was curious, what do you wish you knew before getting into your field of work?
In some ways, it's good not to know too many things before you decide to go into this line of work. It's really nice. It's really nice to know now the way that the world in media, anyway, is sort of moving as far as its ability to recognize and to embrace diversity in storytelling and in the people who tell those stories. Certainly, it's taking a long time, and it could be going faster, and it's not perfect. But I think the overall trend of it is moving in the right direction. And for the first time, I'm beginning to sense there's an inevitability to it. I mean, and I think that's what's freaking a lot of other people out. You know, like, you know, like the more inevitable diversity. I mean, diversity just is. I mean, we live. I mean, here in the Bay Area, it's amazing. Like I'm walking around, I'm like, oh my God, it's so. It not only is it so diverse, and that's yesterday. Like nobody even thinks about it. Like that's diversity, right? I mean, where you've got. You're sitting in a room with three tables, and they're all speaking different languages. You know, like that's pretty cool. So that's already happening. I think just the fact that it's finally being reflected, you know, to see your reality reflected in the media around you, that's responsible. That's being a responsible society, you know. And I think to do good theater means to tell essential stories that reflect the community around it, which I think Hold These Truths is. TV has always been a little bit behind, which is why I think so much of the time we all want to have the same hairstyle, even though our hair doesn't grow that way. But, you know, she has it on that TV show, so we all have to have it, you know, like that kind of a thing. It's like, well, why can't there be 15 different ways to have your hair that, you know, all that kind of stuff. And so it's exciting to see that that's happening, you know, and had I known that at the beginning, it would have just added more sort of logs from my fire. But I mean, that's a big part of why I wanted to do it in the first place also, which is that to just be one more person who looks a little bit different than the next person who can help tell a story, that's important to me. You know, it's important to me for somebody to see, you know, even if it's just, you know, even if it's just someone walking by, you know, not a primary storyteller in the story, but walking with a sense of integrity and realness. You know, that's important to somebody at home watching TV to see somebody that looks like them. You know.
I'm just going to add one more real quick, and then I'll hand it over. So you mentioned that you're the son of two physicians, and I don't know if your parents had an actor in their family prior. I'm just curious, what's that like? Because there's, from the Asian perspective, this whole, oh, okay, if you're the first one in any career that you're pursuing something that your family doesn't know about, and you're bringing that to light for them for the first time, what was that journey like?
You know, when I look back on it, it's very clear now that my parents both came here to the United States in 1968, the year before I was born. And it's very clear to me now as first generation immigrants, Asian Americans, how progressive they were. Like it didn't seem like that when I was growing up, you know, but they, you know, they sort of walked the walk. Like their stated objective was, you know, they said our number one goal is to provide you and your brothers with an education and to give you the opportunity to study whatever you want for as long as you want to study that, and we will provide that for you. And if you find something that you want to do, just do the best you can, do it the best you can do. And, you know, it's one thing to hear that, you know, but when my older brother declared pre-law, I was sort of like, oh God, I guess I'm a doctor now. You know, and the conversation I had with my mom the day I was calling her on the phone to tell her I was going to major in theater, you know, like I'm in an Ivy League school and I'm going to declare theater. I anticipated a certain kind of conversation. I was really nervous, you know, I was scared. And also because by this time I didn't think I was capable to major in anything else by that point. But she shocked me because her response was pretty immediate, which she told me exactly that, which is that if that's what you love, then that's what your dad and I have worked our whole lives to do. And then my dad got on the phone and said, well, if you get a degree, you know, if you get your master's, then you'll be able to teach. So I thought, okay, well, he's not completely maybe on board. But then I went home to get my teeth cleaned at the dentist, and the dentist is telling me all these plays I've done in college and whatever TV shows or whatever, getting my teeth cleaned. I'm like, how do you know that? And he says, your dad is the biggest fan you have. He walks around with newspaper clippings in his pocket and VHS tapes and stuff. My dad had really big pockets, you know. And, you know, so I'm like crying in the dentist chair, cleaning my teeth because, you know, like that's sort of how I discovered how much they supported that. And now that I'm a parent myself, and I have, you know, 2 children, and I see, I want so desperately for them to be safe, healthy, and happy. And the idea of them choosing something that might have a whole lot of uncertainty and unhappiness in their life, I totally understand why they would be worried or why they would not want that for me, how they would want something that offered more of a guarantee of happiness. But they were wise enough or committed enough to sort of, or trusting enough of me and of maybe their parenting to sort of support that. And so it makes it a little bit easier for me with my children because that was given to me, and I feel like that's the least I can do for my children. Whether or not I can afford to pay for their school is a whole other deal, but we'll get to that when we get to it.
So I wanted to ask, what is your criteria for choosing what roles you want to go up for, and how has that changed over your career?
Thanks for that question. For 90% of my career, the biggest criteria for choosing a job was, did I get the job? just desperately trying, just doing whatever came along, you know, like whatever opportunity was there. Second on that list for so long was, if it's offensive to me, I'm not going to do it. And that has been a lot easier over the years than I thought it would be, because usually those are no-brainers. You know, when you see something that you don't want to do for that reason, there's nothing ambiguous about it. It's super clear, not just here, but here. You know, like I feel it here, and I just don't want to do it. And so it's easier than to be like, oh, I'm going to pass on that. You know, the last 10 years or so, fortunately, things have changed where I have a little bit more of an opportunity to choose things, and there's more of a chance to sort of have conversations about what I might want my awesome managers to look for, or what we're thinking about together on things and stuff like that. And just to have that conversation is important. You know, it just helps make me feel like I have some agency over such a big sort of uncertain career, you know. Now, basically, I'm just looking for things that, you know, mainly it's serving great stories, you know, like, and then that's the first thing. Is it an interesting story? And that might be, what's the story? Or it might also be, who's telling that story? I'm really interested in that person that tells that story, and the actor that's involved with that person tells some really interesting stories. I'm interested in those people. And it gets back to that idea of finding a community of people that excite you. Are these people that could be part of my community? That would be really exciting. And then what would I be asked to do to help serve that story? Is it something I've done before? And if it's something I've done before, that's okay. Is it something that interests me? But if it's something I've never done before, then it's especially interesting. Because it's an opportunity to sort of get uncomfortable and grow in an interesting situation. So hopefully those opportunities will continue and I can kind of push the envelope in that direction, but you never know. But that's sort of where we are right now, and I'm feeling very grateful for that.
I have some from the Dory. Dory is our.
Oh, awesome.
We're getting questions.
Hi, Dory.
The folks that are virtually with us.
Hi, friends who are virtually with us.
From Terry, she'd like to know if the Hold My Truths is appropriate for children. She'd like to bring her 9-year-old daughter.
I think it is. There's some language. There's I think the F-bomb is dropped once. There's a gunshot in the play. People are interned, so it's emotionally, it can be emotionally affecting. But I would say, like, if you would show your child E.T., then you can take him to Hold These Truths. Because I just saw E.T. not that long ago, and I was shocked at the language in the. I was like, wow, I was when I saw that, and whenever it was, when I was 11 years old, I had no idea the language was like this. But so if E.T., if your child likes E.T., then take him to see Hold These Truths. How about that?
The other one on there is how did the story come to you?
Hold These Truths?
Yeah.
So Hold These Truths used to be called Dawn's Light, and it had its very first production in Los Angeles at East West Players, which is a venerable and very important theater for Asian Americans in Los Angeles. It was commissioned and then performed there, I think in 2007, with an actor named Ryan Yu playing Gordon. And so then that production was over on the West Coast. And then a couple of years later, New York Theater Workshop was interested in Jeannie as a writer. And so they had the play, and they were really interested in the play and wanting to sort of work on it, or wanting to give her the opportunity to develop it and work on it some more, and see in what ways maybe it could change. And that's when I got involved, because it was on the East Coast, and I'm basically a New York-based actor. And it was given to Lisa Rothy, who was teamed with Jeannie as a director on this workshop. And then Lisa brought me in.
Any other questions? Good. Oh, good. All right.
I'm sorry, which one?
It's 2 minutes.
Next to the gentleman sitting next to Shaquille O'Neal.
So you mentioned too, you did this play in New York and then now here in Silicon Valley. You also mentioned like there's the community, the society that you observe here is like the diverse, and New York City, of course, we know the diversity there. I was just wondering, have area with less diversity or more of a conservative area have interested in doing this? Have you thought of doing this? What kind of reaction are you expecting?
That's a great question. We have performed the play in North Carolina, but we performed it in Chapel Hill, which is, there are all these universities there. It's, when you look at the voting of that state, which is a very red state, that area is one of the few sort of pockets of blue. So I think the people that tend to be interested in producing this play and hearing it tend to be more blue states or blue voting areas, not to make things so binary. But I have often wondered what it would be like to do it in a more conservative area or a less diverse community. I've been thinking about it a lot, actually. Sometimes while doing the play here, I wonder what the audience response would be. You know, we haven't had that opportunity yet. I don't know if we will. I'm also curious. You know, one of our interests and passions would be to take the play to Tokyo. I'm really curious what the community there would make of the play and the story.
The one next to Jamie Foxx, right?
So, what has the reaction been? Have people who have been interned or whose families affected come to the play, and what has generally been the reaction?
There have been a lot. The people who were interned, it's interesting because the ones who were interned who weren't children and who weren't born in the camps, of which there are many, they're at an age now where we're beginning to lose them. You know, when we did the play in Minnesota, for example, there was a gentleman there in the front row who was interned, and he was 100 years old, and he sat in the front, and sometimes his eyes were closed, but afterwards, I mean, he's sharp as a tack. He heard every word and wanted to talk about everything. One of the people he attended with was Gordon Hirabayashi's cousin, and so we've had many people and many here in the Bay Area who have a direct relationship to the internment. Unfortunately, I think by and large, you know, it's just great to hear, you know, your stories told. You know, even if it's not specifically word for word your exact experience, when it's something that's familiar to you or it's something that you know, there's something really, I think, can be important and validating about that, especially when it's being shared with a larger group, you know, because often generationally, the goal was to put it behind. So a lot of people, a lot of Japanese American children did not know about the internment, would learn about it in school, come home, and then find out they bring it up to their parents. Oh my gosh, did you know that this happened to Japanese Americans? And the parents would say, well, now that you mention it, I was born in camp, you know, or your grandparents lost everything they had during the internment. The idea was to sort of push it forward. That's why it's so important to tell these stories now, and that so many different groups, so many generations after those generations have taken it upon themselves to make sure that the stories aren't lost. So I think by and large, I think they've been super supportive, and you know, I just think it's always important to see stories that you know personally in your own experience told with integrity and with you know, with authenticity.
Oh.
Okay. This one is from Cecil. He'd like to know, whose story are you excited to tell next? Or even if there's a Filipino-American story that you want to tell that you haven't been able to tell yet.
Cecil, what do you have? You got a story in mind? It's really important, I think. That's the other thing, is sharing our stories, right? Like, you have to choose what stories to tell and find, but see, a lot of time we don't know stories. We need storytellers, you know, like, that's one of the biggest aspects of diversity too. It's not even just like, you know, getting Cecil to think of a Filipino or Filipino-American story for Filipinos to tell. It's really about having someone like Cecil come up with an idea at all about anything in your experience, whether it's just about growing up, you know, in Oakland or whatever the case may be, and that whole thing. Just having diverse people in rooms telling any kind of story they want, that really helps more than anything too. As far as what stories I'm going to be telling next. Carlos Bulasan. When in doubt, stress the second syllable or the last one. Thou. Yeah, man. I mean, people have tried to tell stories about Carlos Bulasan and also just America's in the heart forever, you know, like, so I guess the question would be, what's the specific angle to the story? Like, what's the story that we're going to tell there? So, but that's a great one. I mean, the whole migrant worker experience, like, but him particularly, you know, the whole dance hall thing, that's sort of an amazing thing too. Yeah, cool. Ping me with some, if you have more specific ideas.
Yeah.
Let's get some Google Wallet going and finance some of this stuff. Come on.
Awesome. Is there any more from the door? Oh yeah.
I need someone to explain to me cryptocurrencies.
All right. That's it? Okay. Any other questions in the back? Any? Oh, awesome.
Okay, is there some TV, movie, or on stage show that you want to swap out an actor actress and swap in an Asian actor actress?
I have nothing personally against Scarlett Johansson, but I'd like to swap out some of that action for some Asian American action. You know, a little. I mean, I'd love to see. I'd love to see an Asian American featured character, not just featured. I want to see an Asian American lead in a Marvel Universe movie. That way, I might actually go see a Marvel Universe movie. How about that? I'll go see one then, because as it is, I mean, I saw Black Panther and just loved it so much. But I mean, at some point, it's like, how many times do you have to see the same thing over and over and over and over and over and over again? I mean, for gosh sakes, you know, we need a superhero or 5. You know, I love that there's the diversity that's popping up in the Star Wars movies now. That's great. More, please. What else? I mean, I just to be specific. You know, that's a good. You asked me a specific question. You know, I would love to see. You know, what'd be great would be to see an Asian American character in Breaking Bad. That'd be cool.
Hey, you could be the next Avenger.
Oh my God, Game of Thrones. Where are all the Asian people in Game of Thrones? Right? That'd be cool. I want to see an Asian person in Game of Thrones that has a British accent. Like, I don't want him to show up and suddenly have some weird Asian accent and be like, well, wait, what? Like, everybody else has a British. It's funny, everybody else speaks British around here. And now, like, the Asian guy shows up and is like, you know, I see a dragon. I see a dragon. I'm not going to do that. So now, if you tune in like for the last season of Game of Thrones and I'm in there doing, I see a dragon, then you can like write me and be like, you jerk.
That's awesome. Any other questions? You good? All right. Yeah. Thank you. Thank you so much.
Thanks for your time, man. Yeah.
Thanks,
Google Campus. Campuses.
All right. Give a round of applause to Joel.
Oh my gosh. Thanks.
Thank you all. Thank you all.
Thanks, Shaq. Thanks for coming. And thanks for sitting in the back.
Thanks for everybody live streaming in. I really appreciate it. On behalf of FGN too as well. So awesome.
Appreciate it, guys. Thanks. Thanks, man.
That was awesome.
Nice to meet you.
Hey, great to meet you too. Let's see if I can. Thanks, man. Appreciate it.